Good evening, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to tonight's shiur. We're Thursday evening of Parshas Emor. Let's go straight to our first question, and that is, before that, the Sefer Halocho minig. For those who are in the United States, it will be there hopefully before Shovuos. Those who are in Europe or England, it's available locally. Okay, so someone's asking me about Hagbeh haTorah, when we lift the Sefer Torah. How exactly do we move? Do we rotate? And so we have here a lashon of the Shulchan Aruch, as you can see on the screen, Kuf Lamed Daled. The Sim Kuf Lamed Daled. It's perhaps worth pointing out that by the Sfardim, the Hagbeh is done before Krias haTorah, and indeed, Kuf Lamed Daled is the beginning of Krias haTorah. So the Shulchan Aruch, written by Rebbe Yosef Karo, has the dinner of Hagbeh at the beginning of Krias haTorah. We Ashkenazim do it after Krias haTorah, with the exception of, I think, Biyala Chassidim. I was once in one Shul, I think it was Biyala Shul, and they did Hagbeh before Krias haTorah, and I thought, oops, I missed Krias haTorah. Okay, so now Hagbeh, it says this is from the Sechas Sofrim, which is a Braisa, and this is now brought to Shulchan Aruch. Mare pnei ksiva Sefer Torah. You show the face, the writing of the Sefer Torah. Lo'om ha'oimdim. You show it to the people. Liminoi v'lismoy. You show it to the people to your right, to the people to your left. Marzir el fonav l'achro. And you rotate it. You move, show it to forward, backwards. Shemitzvah al kol ha'anoshim v'noshim. It's a mitzvah on all the men and the women, liroitz haksav, to see the script, v'lichroya, and to bow and respect, and to say v'zeis haTorah, and it has also Torah Hashem Tamimo, and by the Sfardim they say Torah Hashem Tamimo. That's not in our nusach. Okay, but this is the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. Fine. So it says in Shulchan Aruch to show it to the people to your right, and to show it to the people to your left. So the Bach understands this, that the Sefer Torah is shown, the one who holds the Hagbeh, holds the Sefer Torah, holds it with their script away from himself, as is done in some shuls, Ashkenazi shuls, on Simchas Torah. It's a whole skill to be able to lift the Sefer Torah and then to switch around, that the script should be shown facing the congregation rather than the person holding it himself. By the Sfardim, who have the Sefer Torah in these large boxes, so then they that's how they do Hagbeh. They lift the box, and perhaps it's even easier that way, that they hold it, their grip is, they hold it and they show the ksav, the script, to the people. So the Bach wants to suggest that that's the pshat in the Braisa, that Mari, you show it to the people to your right, and you're actually rotating to your right. Then you rotate to your left, and you're showing it to the people to your left. About 300 years ago, or later perhaps, there was a Rov called the Rav Karmi, who lived in a town in France called Carpentras, and he wrote a sefer called Maimer Mordechai, Mordechai Karmi, however you pronounce it, and he doesn't like the pshat of the Bach, and he says that it means like you just lift it the way we do. He insists, however, that we have a rule that whenever you have an option to go to the right or to the left, you should go to the right first. So he says, although the Braisa says you show it to the people to your right, you show it to the people to your left, but actually you rotate to your right, and therefore the people to your left can see it first. And then you rotate to your left, and the people to your right can see it first, which is a little bit difficult. Okay. Now, I think we have discussed this in the past about the procedure of how we turn around by boye v'sholem. So although there is this rule of turning to your right, so as the Chazan, for example, takes the Sefer Torah towards the Bima, so you can, which way does he go around the Bima? So he takes a right, and then therefore he moves towards the Bima anti-clockwise. And that's how we are, the minig is by hakofes and by heshanis, that we go around the Bima in the anti-clockwise motion. When rotating on the spot, then turning to your right would mean clockwise. And this is also brought in Shulchan Aruch in the dinim of Birchas Koyanim, in Siman Kuf Chav Ches, that the Koyanim go up to the Aron Kodesh and they stand during Moedim and they're facing the Aron Kodesh. And then at a given moment, they're going to do a 180-degree turn around to face the people, because Kosev Oruchu, they should be blessing facing the people. So which way should they rotate? So the way it's written in Shulchan Aruch, and the Alter Rebbe also, they should rotate turning to their right because of this rule, called Pinas Shatapoin Lo Yamin, to turn to their right. But this time, it's turning to the right is in a clockwise motion. Yeah. So although when you are approaching an article, a block, and you want to go around, Sadech Yomin is going to be anti-clockwise, but if you're rotating right to the right when you're standing on one spot, so then it would be a clockwise motion. And I'm sure I've told this before, that in the earlier years, the Rebbe by Lechodoidi was turning to his right. And that's how Rabbi Seligson writes in his book. And then, but I remember very clearly, and I wrote to him, this is going back more than 20 years ago, how can you say that? I remember the Rebbe rotating to his left towards from his place in the southeast corner of the Shul, and the Rebbe would turn towards the Aron Kodesh, which is turning to his left, which is anti-clockwise. So he acknowledged that indeed there was a change, and around Tov Shechov Beis, the Rebbe consulted with Elter Chassidim how it was done in Lubavitch. Bear in mind that the Frierdiker Rebbe was paralyzed, and therefore he wasn't relevant. He was wheelchair bound, and then at that point, the Rebbe changed his hanhog. Instead of rotating to the right, to rotate to the left. Now, this question of rotating, and this is also relevant, by the way, for the Ashkenazim, who, when it comes to the Nanuim by Lulav, do a full circle, it's also going to be the question to rotate clockwise or anti-clockwise. And I'm sure I've shared this before, and for those who want to read this more carefully, in the Siddur, Rebbe Nazokin, which I published some 20 years ago, Bez Hashem, the new edition should come out shortly. So in the Miluyim, there's a whole chapter about this, discussing what I'm going to share with you briefly now. And that is that in Tzemach Tzedek, in one place, he seems to be saying that you should rotate to the right. And in another place, in the Chidush HaShas, Tzemach Tzedek says that if you rotate to the right, that means you have to move your right foot backwards. If you move to the left, then you're going to use your right foot to go forwards. So you have here the choice between moving to the right backwards, or to the left forwards. There's a preference to go forward to the left over going backwards to the right. And that's the basis of rotating to your left when you are, although you normally should turn to the right, but when you are rotating on the spot, to turn left. And therefore, I can say the pshat of the Braise and the Shulchan Aruch, that you turn to your left, and you show the Sefer Torah to the people to your right. And then you turn to your right, and then you'll show the Sefer Torah to the people to your left. That could be. Now, then, in the Hiskashrus journal, in issue number 274, Eder, Rabbi Leibel Bestritsky, Olav Shalom, tells us that the Rebbe, before the Rebbe became Rebbe, taught the young people in 770 how to do Hagbeh, and it was to turn to the left, a quarter turn, and then just to put it down on the Bima. Very, very interesting. you have here a brisa straight to the left, to the right, everyone should be able to see. And here he is saying that the Rebbe told him to turn just to the left. And okay. Now I was intrigued to check in what was done in 770 by the Rebbe. Now, usually the Rebbe had the Aliyah just before Hagbeh, and the Rebbe, especially Mondays and Thursdays, so the Rebbe is standing. If I'm standing at the Bima, I'm about to do Hagbeh, the Rebbe is to my right. And say if I would rotate to the left, so that I would be showing the Ksav to the Rebbe. So I went online. There's a website, whatever it's called, Rebbe Drive, and I looked up various videos of how Hagbeh was done by the Rebbe. Particularly, I looked for Tanis Tzibur. There. I must tell you, there wasn't a consistent pattern. There was one fellow who just rotates to the left, and one rotates to the right. Now, what's more significant is that we have Reb Zalman Gurari, Olav Shalom, who would annually buy the Schus of Hagbeh. And Reb Zalman, so when there was the small Sefer Torah, even in his older age, he did Hagbeh on the small Sefer Torah. So when they use the small Sefer Torah, Reb Zalman usually have Hagbeh, and he lives the Sefer Torah, rotates to his right, and in the sense that the back of the parchment is to the Rebbe, he rotates all the way around till the northwest. At that point, the Rebbe can see the Ksav of the Sefer Torah, and then he rotates back, and then he does a little bit of a turn to his left, and then he puts the Sefer Torah down. And saw that a few times. So what I'm seeing is that there's, as I say, an inconsistency, and I don't know whether Rebbe Zalman asked, but I find it strange that Rebbe Leibel Bistrutsky says that before Tafshin Yud, the Rebbe had given guidance, and that clearly was not being followed by Rebbe Zalman, who had a chazaka to be doing Hagbeh. So it all makes it all very strange to me. The Kitzur, what I would say, for lack of proper Messiah in this, to do this as it says in the Brisa, rotating first to your left, showing to the people on the right, and then moving around to the forward and all the way around to the back. In that way, you've enabled the people to your left and the people to the front, but everyone should be able to see the Sefer Torah. That seems to be the correct fulfillment of the Brisa, of the Halocho. And I see there's a couple of comments in the chat. Right, so I'm going to read this. It would appear that one should follow Minhag HaMokeh. Yes, fair enough. Maybe Reb Zalman did this way so that the Rebbe would see it first. Yes, no, I'm sorry. No, that wasn't true, because Reb Zalman, the way he rotated, if he wanted the Rebbe to see it first, he should have rotated to the left, and then the Rebbe would see it first. He didn't. He moved, you can check it yourself. He moves to the right, so he's blocking the Ksav, because the Rebbe sees the back of the Klav, and then he rotates all the way around, and that's when the Rebbe can see it. So, yeah. And the other ones who did it the other way was because they wanted the Rebbe to see the Ksav without delay. Okay? So it's not a very clear picture. I just explored this a little bit. Okay. Now here, a question number 2 is relevant many families, I'm sure, about girls singing and their brothers possibly objecting. Now, it's not always purely out of frumkeit. Sibling rivalry is, I don't want to hear us, whatever, they can sometimes have excuses to not tolerate the other ones singing and to cause them whatever, yeah? We've been there. So coming back, question is there halacha guidance about this? And then is there din lifnim mishur sadin, and then there will become the question about imposing your lifnim mishur sadin on someone else around the Shabbos table. So let's go step by step. Where do you find these halachas? So we have in the dinim of Krias Shema in Siman Ayin Hey. very important. It says in the Torah, "V'hoyo machanecha kodesh," your camp shall be sacred. Hashem should not see any shameful exposure. And he will, as if to retract from before you. So we have this idea that where a broch is said, where prayer is said, it has to be in a pure place and not in a place where there's exposure of erva. That is one issue. Therefore, there's an issue of if there is, let's say, before dealing with a voice, let's say a married woman's hair is uncovered. There's one issue whether she is allowed to go with the hair uncovered or not. There's another issue whether you are allowed to say a brocha or shema in that presence. So these are two separate issues. One is whether the person's allowed to do what they're doing. The other one is whether I'm allowed to say a brocha in that presence. So now let's read first of all the Shulchan Aruch. Yesh li zoher mikmias kol zemer isho b'shas Krias Shema. One should be careful not to hear the sound, the voice of a woman singing when you are saying Shema. Then it adds, ve'afilu ishto, even if this woman happens to be your wife. Also, it's okay for if she's tahora, it's okay for her to be singing and you can hear her singing. But it's an exposure, which is not compatible with your saying a bracha, saying Hashem's name. But a regular voice, that's not a problem. And so when you hear a woman speaking, it's okay. Well, I just translated this, and all right, let's take a look on the left on the screen. We have here from the Sefer Evan Yisrael, from the late, I think it was Rav Fisher, who was the Rav in the Eda Charedis in Yerushalayim. So his comments on that piece of Shulchan Aruch, and he says a very interesting explanation. When it says Koil Horogil Boy, Eina Erva, a voice which you're used to hearing is not a problem. So he says it doesn't mean, it can mean even a Koil Shel Zemer, even if it's a singing voice, because you're used to it, that's okay. And therefore it's okay on Shabbos that the girls will join in singing the Zmiris, because they've been singing from when they were little girls, and therefore you're used to hear that voice. And then he says another aspect which makes a lot of sense, that of chinuch for the girls, it's valuable, that they should also enjoy the Shabbos table, and singing the Zmiris with that atmosphere is valuable for them too. So he's okays it. What I find strange when he says Koil Horogil can mean a singing voice, because you read the Ramah, he says you're listening to your wife singing, you're not allowed to say Shema. So Koil Horogil means your sister singing, you are allowed to, doesn't fit. At any rate, it certainly doesn't fit with the Alter Rebbe, because the Alter Rebbe we're reading the top of the screen. Koil Zemer She'isha, the voice of the singing voice of a woman, whether she's married or unmarried, even your wife is erva, and therefore you're not allowed to read Shema in the presence, and so too for davening to say the Sefer Torah. Aval Koil Dibura, when she's speaking. So the Alter Rebbe has taken the word Koil Horogil and he's explained it. Koil Dibura, when she's speaking. Kiven Shirogil boy Einoi erva. So even your wife, etc., a close relative, even though you're rogil, but that's not the heter. The heter is the koil hadibur rather than the koil of shira. That seems to be poshta pshat. I'm so very surprised on Rav Fisher taking that out of context. Now, why is this so unclear? I'll tell you why. We all know that there's an issur of yichud. A man with another woman, unrelated, they're not allowed to be secluded together. With your sister, you are allowed to be secluded. With your daughter, etc. There's no issur yichud. And therefore, there's a certain blurriness What is this? What is the story about when it comes to singing? Is it going to be compared to like Yichud, where that's okay? Or do you say, no, it's well, so let's read this. This is now from the Kloisenberger Rov, where he talks about Koil Isha, and he says Koil Isha is a little bit less strict than exposure of a tefach, etc. And he says that to listen to hear the voice of your daughter until she's 11 years old, that's okay. Then he goes on, even if she's older. So when it comes to embracing, affectionate contact, so the Prisha, was a commentary on the Tur, and Simon Chof Aleph, we'll see it in a moment, says that affectionate contact is allowed even with an older sister, not only if she's under bas mitzvah, etc. And so says the Beis Shmuel. On this basis, he is saying just like affectionate contact, physical contact, is permitted, so to hear her singing is also permitted. So this is the Kloisenberger Rov. He later says, perhaps on the level of Chumrah, etc., it's not Midas Chassidus, but Minad Din, he says it's okay. So what we're left with so far is that Minad Din, it's okay for the girls to be singing in the presence of their brothers. If it's a Midas Chassidus, it's a Midas Chassidus, so it's not necessarily that you can impose it on others. What I find very, very strange, and I don't have an answer to this, in the Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, Perik Zayin, he has a whole treatise on the Minyonim of Aroyos, of all of this area, and he says that the kissing of relatives, even though it's not as if there will be a lewd kind of passion there, like your sister, aunt, granddaughter, mechuar hu moed ve'osr. Well, there's no mouth. He says it's very inappropriate and it's forbidden. I says again, he repeats himself because of osr, and he brings the story of Ulo, where it says in the Gemara that he would kiss his sister's hands when he came back from the Beis HaMedrash. And later he retracted from this because he saw there's no heter for it. And and then he says, here Rambam says further, the permission applies only a mother with her son, father with a daughter, and that's until the mother is allowed to kiss her son until he's 12 years old, and the father his daughter until she's 9 years old, and after that's us. So the Rambam is extremely machmir. It's just the opposite of what we've seen of the Prisha, who says, afilu keshehi gedola. And I saw someone says, even if she's married. So you've got here from one extreme to the other. And certainly the minhag ha'olam, as far as I know, is to take the lenient position. All right. So therefore, coming back to the singing, there is according to the lenient position of chibuk v'nishuk, of affectionate contact, singing shouldn't be any worse. There is a minhag chassidim, etc., to be machmir, and that's something which, if the boys have a problem with it because of they want to be machmir, okay, then they have to find a diplomatic way of managing the situation. Let's move on. So now gearing up to Shovuos. So the Rebbe encouraged that children should be brought to Shul to hear Krias haTorah, to hear the reading of Aseres HaDibros. This has developed into a whole movement of making a Krias haTorah in the afternoon so that children should be able to come. All right, and Baruch Hashem, a lot of good things are happening through this. At the same time, there's to make a Krias haTorah, you have to have 6 people that haven't heard Krias haTorah. So where are you going to get those 6 people? So sometimes you have a boch, you'll say, you know what? I'm going to be in Shul, but I will choose not to be yoitze Krias haTorah. And then I'll be available to make up your minyan in the afternoon. Very noble. So now more than one of the Chachmei Chabad have objected to this het and say there's no chiyuv to hear Krias haTorah, and therefore you cannot say I'm not going to be yoitze. Who says you have to be yoitze? The mitzvah of Krias haTorah is that when there's a kehillah, when they are together, there's a chiyuv of the kehillah to have Krias haTorah. But who says there's a chiyuv on the yochid to hear Krias haTorah? Now how can you kind of abdicate if it's not a chiyuv in the first place? That was his argument, and in Nesivim B'stei Shlichus, volume 3, there's a chapter with 10 paragraphs. I call it the Aseres HaDibros about Aseres HaDibros. 10 paragraphs about guidelines for the Minyonim of Aseres HaDibros. So there, this point is brought up in the notes, and I have there a note from Rebbe Beryl Korf, who refutes this argument, and it shows that there is a chiyuv to hear Krias haTorah. So you've got Rabbi Yosef Engel, who asks this question: is the chiyuv of Krias haTorah on the individuals to hear, or is it in a mitzvah on the tzibur to provide? And so we've got there several proofs which you can look up. But I want to share with you another, I think, original proof that Krias haTorah is a chiyuv on the individual to hear, not just on the kehillah to have as a kehillah. And this is from the Mishnah in Tanis. In Mishnah in Tanis tells us how that there were 24 groups called Mishmoros, and they had a 1 week where they were like doing the avodah, the koyanim, the levim, and then you had also Yisraelim. They were called Anshi Ma'amod. Those in Yerushalayim, they would be coming to the Beis Hamikdash to be representing Klal Yisrael in the Beis Hamikdash, and there were Anshi Ma'amod who didn't come to Yerushalayim, and in their cities they would also have a seder of special extra davening, etc., for that week where they were on duty. So again, there were those Yisraelim who were on duty in the Beis Hamikdash, and they got those Yisraelim who were on duty remotely. And they would do Krias haTorah every day. They would take Bereshis, and they'd go through the Sheishis Yemei Bereshis. That's the Krias haTorah which they did. And it goes into a lot of detail in the Mishnah. But then it says, Ubemincha nichnosim v'koyin al pihen k'koyin es shema. In the afternoon, they would reassemble. Nichnosim, they would come to the central point, the central shul, where they would meet. This time, they did not take out a Sefer Torah. The koyin al pihem. They would recite the reading orally. K'koyin es shema, as we would read the Shema. So hang on a second. There's a chiyuv of Krias haTorah, and instead of a Krias haTorah in the formal way with the Sefer Torah being taken out, each one says the parsha on his own. What does that tell you? It tells you that you have a chiyuv of Krias haTorah, and if you can't do Krias haTorah by listening in the formal way, so then you're going to sit in your corner, and you're going to say recite the same psukim. Shema. So it tells you there's a personal chiyuv. So just in an interesting mocker, which I haven't seen anyone bring, to show that Krias haTorah is a chiyuv on the yochid to listen, not just on the kehillah to provide, which actually makes a lot of sense in any case. Ad kedei kach, we saw by the Rebbe, Krias haTorah, Montag and Donnerstag, till Tavshin Memches, even though it didn't daven Shachris with the minyan, but Krias haTorah, he was always there to Krias haTorah. So as if Krias haTorah was the greater chiyuv to hear Krias haTorah. Okay, you can say it. All right, whatever. Okay, let's go on to the next point. I give over this shiur also occasionally in the Yeshiva Ketana and the Mechina. So on Sunday, I told over our discussion from last week on the Shvono and the Shvonach and the Kudsho and the Kudasho. And so afterwards, a 15-year-old boy comes over to me and he says that actually the Rebbe in a couple of places talks about Dikduk and about Mil'el Milra and about Shvono Shvonach, and then he shows me the two Sforim, and one is in Tofshin Mem, and one is Tofshin Yud Beis, I think, Tof Yud Gimel, the other one Tofshin Mem Beis, and I was really very impressed that a 15-year-old boy should have this knowledge of where these like small points are written, and he comes over to me quietly, and I wanted to share them with you. So the first one is where the Rebbe says there's a word of the Frierdiker Rebbe that Eden are not particular in davening and the rules of Dikduk of Mil'el and Milra. Just to explain to you what's Mil'el and Milra, whether you put the emphasis on the earlier syllable or on the later syllable. So, for example, if I would say in English, it was raining, so I took an umbrella in the street. So you don't understand what I'm talking. What do you say? Umbrella. Yeah, you don't understand what I'm talking about. Umbrella. Now you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And then the machlokes between Americans and England. Is it advertisement or advertisement? Okay. So we have here rules of where the emphasis is put. And that's so Mil'el is on the penultimate syllable, and Milra is in the last syllable. So there are rules. And the Rebbe is saying here from the Frierdiker Rebbe that Eden are not so particular about the Mil'el and Milra. Of Avodas HaMalochim, it's the job of the Malochim to sort out the tziruf yoitze b'diuk, to sort out. So I guess by Ashkenazim we need no more Malochim employed, and by Sfardim who are more accurate in the rules of Mil'el and Milra. Okay, so that's one, and that's just for sure. We could see the way we can hear the Rebbe davening, etc. That we're not so particular about Mil'el and Milra. Then in Tov Shin Mem Beis, the Rebbe is talking about occasion where the Tzemach Tzedek's Rebbetzin would say Tehillim, and the sons would hear the mother saying Tehillim, and she made a lot of mistakes. And it wasn't as if you could correct the mistakes, because the next time would be other mistakes. But so the Tzemach Tzedek said how that they shouldn't be disrespectful about it, and he should know that when he went to Peterburg, he had a Yeshua. He was helped largely because of the merit of the Rebbetzin saying Tehillim. So in that context, the Rebbe says the following: learning of Dikduk in order to know how to be careful in saying the words of davening, especially in Shema and in the first three brochas of Shemona Esrei. That's important for males, for men dafka, because they have to know the rules of Dikduk to be able to say the words correctly. For example, Shvono, Shvonach, etc. It looks like the ones who published this didn't know that in Alpi Kabbalah the word Shavo is spelled with a Shin Beis Aleph, not Shin Vav Aleph. The Rebbe adds here further, it looks like some people don't even know the difference between Shvono and Shvonach, and even if they do, they're not so particular when they're davening. But for Noshim, we don't find such a chiyuv that they should have to be so knowledgeable, etc. If they say it accurately, it won't do any harm, but not such an emphasis. Okay. So this is the second quote. The Rebbe is saying that one should be careful about Shvono Shvonach, although he was more dismissive about the emphasis on Mil'el Milra. Now, what I want to just ask you, what's this business of having to be medayek or medaktek in the first three brochas of Shemona Esrei? There is something about kavona is ma'akev in the first brocha of Shemona Esrei. That I know about, but I've tried to find something, any source for something that the Dikduk ha-kriya, to be articulating the words. There's a special emphasis in the first three brochas of Shemona Esrei. If someone can tell me where that is, I'd be grateful. Okay, let's go on. One more point about that is, if you remember last week, we had a discussion about the asterisks on the word dekudusha and the inconsistency in the particular siddur which we discussed. So I was told by the editors that in the newer editions, all those asterisks have been removed. So, I mean, not just on the word dekudusha, not on the rest of the siddur here. Okay, let's move on. So one of our listeners called me up last night or 2 nights ago, and this individual had eaten bread for supper, and then had other foods, and then had some lokshen, and then had finished eating this lokshen, had forgotten that he had bread earlier, and he said alamichi on the lokshen. And then he realizes, oops, I had bread. What do? Do I have to make a bracha? Does al hamichya count b'di'eved for bread? That's the question. So this is not addressed clearly in Shulchan Aruch at all. And there's a discussion whether minyan brochas is deraisa or not deraisa. What's the difference between alamichya and the full bentsching? This has got 3-4 brochas. And alamichya is what's called mi'en sholish. They're all condensed into one brocha. So is the fact that you should have 3 brochas, is that a din min haTorah, or is it not a din min haTorah? So there's a discussion about that. And the halacha seems to follow that minyan brochas is lav doirais, which means it says in the Torah, "Vochalto savoto ve'rachto." There's a mitzvah to say a brocha after eating, yes, but it doesn't say you have to say 3 brochas. So if you said alamichya, so you've fulfilled the mitzvah. All right, with Rabbanon, you should have said 3 brochas, but you could say that you're already yoitze, because minyan brochas is lav derais. Here, there's in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, he seems to follow this. And however, in the Siddur, there's the following. In the Kuf Samach Ches, in the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe talks about this relationship between the full bentsching and the brocha me'en sholish, the abbreviated bentsching. And then he has a kuntus achron, and at the end he says, according to the reasoning I've given in the Siddur, then the picture is different. And I just want to share with you, I don't want to go into the whole pilpul. Here, towards the end of Perik Beis, it says like this: although the fact that you need to say 3 brachas after bread is a din rabbanon, however, since Moshe Rabbeinu instituted hazon as a freestanding bracha, Liftoyach bebaruch v'lachtim bebaruch. This is that kind of Moshe Rabbeinu to say the bracha till hazon esakel. Roy lahach mebisveik okay sofik shel teira. So although normally you say sofik brachas lahokel, but if it's a sofik, whether you have to say hazon or not, you should take the stricter view. What's the context there? The context is the person had a certain type of blintzes, whatever it was, and sofik, so the main weight is to say that they are mezonos and alamichya. The Alter Rebbe says, but if you ate kedei sviyah, you ate a larger amount of these, whatever they are, some kind of blintzes. I'm just using that loosely because I don't remember exactly. It's some kind of food which is kind of debatable whether it's mezonos or hamotzi. If you ate a larger amount, and therefore who sofik shel teireh, then you should be machmir to eat b'tzei chasuda or something. So here is that's what this apology in the brackets is about. What's the difference? Why is there sofik shel teireh? If I say alamichya, I'm also yoitze min haTorah. So the answer is, yeah, you're yoitze min haTorah if you say alamichya, but you're missing out on takonos Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore don't rely on that alone. So we have here a kind of interesting balance that for the bentsching, even though it follows in Seichel that alamichya should be enough b'di'eved, but because you're missing out in takonos Moshe, then perhaps you should be machmir. But then on the other hand, you got to have question of bracha sofik bracha levatol. So listen to what it says over here in the Piskei Shovuos, where he addresses this. He brings from earlier sources. Lemaisa, how are you going to deal with this? You already said alamichya. You can't say bentsching again because perhaps you'll be yoitze. She says the recommendation is washing your daim and have a kazais, and then you'll bench. And this way, your yoitze, your shiur of bentsching. So that was the recommendation. It's not always so convenient, but that would be the recommendation. So again, let's summarize that. A person who had bread and in error said al hamichya. So what should he do now? She should be machmir to wash again, have a kazayis of bread, and then say bentsching, and then that way is covered. Okay. So yeah, the point with the Alter Rebbe is saying it's not, when Moshe Rabbeinu institutes something, it's not a shiur min haTorah, but because it's Moshe Rabbeinu, therefore royal hachmir b'sveka shel ka'en sofek shel Torah. It's a, I'm not sure where the Alter Rebbe's source is, but this is an interesting chiddush. Let's go for one more thing. So also, this was perhaps Monday night, someone calls me up, and it was the night before, Sunday night, he forgot to count Sfiras Ha'omer. He's now in Shul on Monday evening. And in his town, they only have an early Ma'ariv. So he is Lubavitcher, so he'll have a Ma'ariv later, but he was in Shul, he was there for Mincha, and he stays for Ma'ariv. Okay, he answered Baruch Hu. As he answers Baruch Hu, oops, I didn't count Sfira last night. So now, when you answer Baruch Hu, it's as if now you've confirmed it's now Laila, it's night. So now, could you now, if you forgot to say Sfira the night before, so then there is a solution that if you say it during the day, then the following night you can say it with a bracha. So this is his question. I already answered Baruch Hu, so I already kind of artificially made it night. Can I now switch back to say it's still day and count Sfira without a bracha for the past day, and then an hour later it'll be night, I'll say Sfira for tonight with a bracha. That was his dilemma. Now, in a related debate, so someone like a relative of mine, very into Mitzvah Tefillin, he's made a practice to go to Shiva houses for Mincha Ma'ariv, his area of Vishlichas, and he finds people there, and he says, have you put on tefillin today? Put on tefillin with them. Now they've just davened Bima, or they've answered Baruch Hu, if they did or they didn't, but let's say they did. So can you put on tefillin after you already davened Ma'ariv? Same question. Once you've made it night, can you now switch it back to day again? So over there, as I've also written about in one of the Sforim, over there, the psak is, the Alter Rebbe talks about it, put on tefillin without a brach. Because you've already made it into night by saying Baruch Hu, by answering Baruch Hu, so then you put on tefillin because now Torah is still day. Torah, the fact is it's still day. But because you've made it artificially by night, so therefore you put on tefillin without a brach. So now we're back to our question with Sfiras Ha'omer. Can he say, well, it's not night yet, because the night is still day, although I answered Baruch Hu. So the answer is, that's what you can see over here, that they are saying in the Piskei Shovuos and Simon Peites, if it's before the Shkia, even, let's say, if a woman already benched licht, and then she realized, oops, last night I didn't count Sfira, she can still now say yesterday's Sfira, the morning Sfira, or last night's Sfira, and can continue saying it with the bracha. And the reason for this is the following. There is an opinion which says if you missed a day, you can still count with the bracha. That's a suffix. If you count it by day, then there are those who say that it makes no difference, and some say it does help. So when you have a sveka, that could be that you did not lose your sequence, so then you'd have to continue to count with the bracha, because there's those who say even you don't have a sequence, you can count with the bracha. So when there's a suffix that perhaps I have a sequence, then you may continue counting with the bracha. So now, lo b'zogen, yeah, granted, there's a machlokes, and there's a svara to say that it was already, once I said Baruch Hu, it's too late, but there's a svara it's not too late. And therefore, there's a margin of suffix, of doubt, And therefore, that allows you to continue counting with the bracha. In other words, it's not clear that I missed. It's debatable. Okay, so I'm allowed to continue counting with the bracha. So that remains the halacha, that this person who answered Baruch Hu and then counted last night's Sfira, an hour later, you can continue counting tonight's Sfira with a bracha. Yes, now I just want to finish off, although this is not on your sheets. Last week we were speaking about the Shabbos belt, and I did get a fair amount of feedback about this. If you want to see, I mentioned last week, there's a specially made Shabbos belt, which the key actually becomes the tongue of the buckle. So you can see that on the screen. They've got the options for one key or for two keys. Now, whilst that is better, and perhaps it wasn't so clear last week, what about if you don't have such a belt, you just want to have, my main point last week was, I hope that was clear, that it's important that the combination of key with belt should be before Shabbos, but that the key should serve mamash as the tongue of the buckle. Although that seems to be the preference, certainly that's not the general view of poskim. As I mentioned last week, Reb David Feldman has this in his Kitzah, where you have the key is not a buckle. The key is being used as a shtick to connect the two sides of the belt, but it's not a buckle. So someone writes that Mr. Rabbi David Waxer writes to me the following. Yehuda Klapman, the sofer, once told me that he fashioned a belt by drilling holes in the two ends of his glasses, and he used a string or elastic to wear them on Shabbos. Once Reb Zalman Shimon Dvorkin saw that and says, in this way you can even carry a pot of cholent. So that's what he's quoting Reb Zalman Shimon. Okay. So what's not clear in this little anecdote, whether the glasses were joined to this belt before Shabbos, in which case, yes, I would have to accept that just like David Feldman allows you to use a key to connect a belt, not as a buckle. So if you connect it before Shabbos, so then that was with a pair of glasses, it would be the same thing. That's what Zalman Shimon saying, pot of cholent. By the way, but the pot of cholent mustn't have cholent in it, because although the pot might become part of the belt, but the cholent inside is not part of your belt. So, for example, people have got these pendants, like with a locket. So the pendant itself with a little box is a piece of jewelry. But the fact that inside you keep there your hermesitas, or you keep there a picture of your einiklach, so that you should be able to, be'es rotzen, to look at your einiklach, the picture is being carried. It's not part of the jewelry. So the same thing, even if you had a pot of cholent as part of your belt, I hope it's comfortable, but the cholent itself would not be allowed to be carried that way. One last point about that: people are asking about the Rebbe using a belt for transporting a key, and I think I did mention that the Rebbe did, and after he felt that his room was not being not secure with having hidden the keys somewhere in 770, but I don't know exactly the details, whether it was a elastic, whether it was a gartel, whether it was tied before Shabbos, how it was tied with clips. I don't know. I don't know the details about that, and therefore I'm going to decline to give any more details. If someone knows and shares, so then we'll know. Okay, with this I will close tonight's shiur. Wish you all a wonderful Shabbos, and we should hear B'Seiros Toivos, good news from Eden Bichlal, especially from Eretz HaKodesh, to see a Geula, and we should be Zecher to Geula Shleima with Mashiach Tzidkenu, V'Meheru Yameinu Mamish.
Goyer, thank you.